Hi. Let's talk about Yahweh and his attempt to introduce himself to us. I'll start by using the story of Jonah. If you don't know Jonah's story, it's in a little book called Jonah in the Bible, and it's kind of an interesting read. Jonah didn't particularly want to obey Yahweh. In fact, Jonah jumped on a ship and tried to run away from Yahweh. But Yahweh has his meticulous plans, and he will move heaven and earth to make them work out the way he wants them to. So in Jonah's case, Yahweh used the winds and the waves to wreak havoc on the ship so that the passengers would throw Jonah into the sea to stop Yahweh's storm. Then Yahweh provided a big fish which swallowed up Jonah, left him undigested for 3 days, and then puked him out onto the beach. Now, there were other people in the world. Yahweh might have chosen a more compliant man to go to Nineveh and preach to the people. Well, he could have done it himself, but he definitely didn't have to use this one particular man. This, however, shows the lengths to which Yahweh is willing to go in order to make happen exactly what he wants. And this is important to what I'm fixing to say. Yahweh supposedly knows every thought entertained by you, me, and everyone else who ever lived or ever will live. He remembers for all eternity. 7 billion prayers could go up to him at one time, and he would hear them all and make his decision instantaneously. He doesn't even have to ponder about what he wants to do. And he performs miracle upon miracle to bring about his plans and desires. Yahweh knows how our minds work. He knows exactly what it would take to reach every individual, just as he did Jonah, and convict us with the knowledge that he is and that we should obey him. Yet, and this is what's troubling, this amazing deity couldn't give us awareness of him in a manner that we would all recognize him and accept him as the one true God. Should have been an easy task, but he failed miserably. He even admits that he failed when he proclaimed that few people would find him. How did Yahweh think was the best way? Well, surely he wanted to use the best way. And how did he think was the best way to present himself to us? Well, he thought it was in a book. A book. This is the most important work Yahweh had to do, providing evidence of himself so that he could protect his most precious creation. That should be his top priority. Yet when it came to the most important thing in the world, communication with his people, so that we can know that he exists and we can understand his will for us. And he uses the worst means possible, a book. For centuries, very few people could have read the book, even if they had a copy, and at one time it wasn't that easy to come by. According to Wikipedia, under literacy in the United States, the literacy rate today in this country is 99%. That's for people over 15 years old. But we are number 28 in the 214 countries included when making this report. In many countries, literacy is considered just being able to read a simple sentence. The U.S. standard is a little higher, but according to a 1992 survey, the literary competency of about 40 million people, adults, was at level 1. The lowest level, and that's understanding of basic written instructions. We all read Facebook. We know people can't write. We also know they can't seem to understand much of anything that is written or even spoken. And this is when talking to others who speak their language and are part of their own culture. Most of us struggle at one time or another to understand what we read, and particularly in the book Yahweh supposedly left us. When I was doing my master's work, I had to read a bunch of books about various doctrines believed and taught in the Christian community. And it didn't matter what the subject was. The books presented 5 or 6 different views from so-called experts. The Bible is a complicated book. And again, we're expected to believe that it was provided by an all-knowing God who knew our minds better than we do. Yet he couldn't give us a clear and concise document that we could all look at and say, yeah, that's what it says. We all read it the same way. Was that deliberate? Was that deliberate? Did it happen because Yahweh is incapable of communicating with us? What's the problem? The problem is not us, in case that's what you're thinking. We work hard to find truth. Now, I'm not saying that some of us aren't willfully ignorant when it comes to how we act. I spent years trying to convince a Christian man that if porn is evil to make, then it's evil for him to watch. If you can see it, I can be it. That's what I told him. But he never acknowledged that I was right, because he wanted to watch his porn but believed that the making of porn was evil. So yeah, we might in some cases willfully misunderstand, but some of us have spent our lives trying to comprehend that book. We've lost sleep, we've prayed for wisdom and guidance, we've read every other book we could get our hands on to try to help us grasp the concepts in the Bible. Even people who pretend the Bible is so easy to understand argue among themselves about pretty much everything it says. Is birth control a sin? We don't know. May women have short hair and men have long hair? Are tattoos sinful? Is it okay to eat meals in the church building? Is baptism a burial or a sprinkling? Is baptism even necessary? We don't know. And these are simple little things. Major doctrines like predestination and even when Jesus was declared to be the Son of God are discussed over and over and over because we can't come to an agreement on them. And sure, we all think we have the correct answers because the Bible is clear on that. And that's only part of the problem. We can't be sure the Bible is even inspired by Yahweh. Books written by anonymous writers at an anonymous time in history, that's what Christians base their lives on, used to condemn others, build temples and statues to honor, and are willing to die for. It's impossible to determine who wrote the books in the Bible, or even when they were written. And resolving when the canon was decided upon is also a thorny issue. Even theologians know that the Bible didn't fall from heaven, and that the history of its production spans more than 1,000 years. And another problem is determining whether those who put the book together chose the truly inspired words of Yahweh or the correct written documents, because there were many from which they could have chosen. Regarding the New Testament's construction, the Tridentine Council took place at Trent between 1545 and 1563. This is the 16th century, and Christians were still trying to determine God's Word. What if we still don't have it all? What if there really is a 3rd Corinthians or letter to the Laodiceans? And what if they contain information necessary to our salvation? Actually, there is a 3rd Corinthians, and the Syriac Orthodox Church accepts it as canonical. We also have the book of Jasher that's mentioned in Joshua. But we ignore it because it didn't make it into the Catholic or Protestant canon. With all the writings available at the time, and even today, it would be impossible for uninspired men to know which documents to include in the true New Testament and which to cast aside. People still argue about which books within the canon are genuine. While Christians may say, God guided the men who chose the books of the Bible, that's just wishful thinking. If Yahweh didn't watch over the original document's preservation, and he didn't, why in the world would he guide these men to choose the correct copies? When determining the New Testament canon, the First Council voted the book of Acts and Revelation out. The next, in 363 CE, the Council of Laodicea, they voted them in. And then again, in 406 CE, They voted them, along with some others, out again. While these books were out, nobody knew Acts and Revelation were inspired by God. They were looked at the way Christians today might look at the gospel according to Mary Magdalene. During 24 different councils, several books at a time were voted out, whole chapters were omitted, and insertions were made, till it may now be assumed to be thoroughly changed, altered, and amended by 50 translations and 150,000 alterations, and is still believed by millions to be the same old book. However, according to Kurt Eichenwald, the beliefs that became part of Christian orthodoxy were pushed into it by the Holy Roman Empire. By the 5th century, the political and theological councils voted on which of the many Gospels in circulation were to make up the New Testament. With the power of Rome behind them, the practitioners of this proclaimed orthodoxy wiped out other sects and tried to destroy every copy of their Gospels and other writings. So, not only is a written document not the best way to make Yahweh known, but the mess he allowed to be made of his supposed written document doesn't give us much reason to have faith in its veracity. Therefore, even if Yahweh had been able to speak in a way we could understand imperfectly, we still wouldn't know whether it was even him speaking. And why, pray tell, did Yahweh need writers anyway, or translators? Why not give us each a list of his rules and regulations in our own language? I mean, if he really cares. If it's that important to him that we know him and do what he wants. He actually did write out, supposedly, the 10 Commandments for Moses. That wear him out? Does he not know other languages so that he simply couldn't give us all a document in our own language? A God could have done better. A God would have done better. A God should have done better, for sure. If he had to use a book, if that was his only means, he could have given it to us free of any problems. He didn't watch over the writing. He didn't watch over the protection of the writing. He didn't watch over the translations. He didn't watch over the collection of the writings into a single book. We all know there are mistakes, additions, and corrections in the Bible. We also know, as stated, that some writings are missing from the book. So we can't deny these things. But people say, well, I'm sure we have what we need. It's enough to get us to heaven. Are you sure about that? I want you to think about this for a minute. Here's this God who's all-powerful, can do anything he wants to do. If he wanted, he could take all the planets in our solar system, squeeze them together in his hand so that they turn to dust, killing us and every living thing. Then he could snap his fingers and everything would go back exactly as it was. And we wouldn't know anything had happened. Maybe he does it sometimes. Who knows? This is the God we are told exists, but we're expected to believe the following about this God, this amazing God. He made humans and desperately wanted them to know him. So he came down and said hi and told them he put a poisonous tree in their garden and not to eat from it. He then sent down his evil nemesis that he created for the purpose of being his evil nemesis, since he knew that would be the outcome, so that the nemesis could tempt one of his new ignorant creatures to eat the fruit from the poisonous tree. Then he flew into a rage when the fruit was eaten and basically abandoned the people for a while. Then he got mad about something else, drowned everybody except one family. Then he chose another family and killed most of them in a wilderness. Then he said, I'll send my son. They'll murder him and then I can be happy. So that happened. Then years later, Yahweh said, I guess I better write this down. So he had several men write the story, but none of the accounts sound the same. And the narratives are too crazy to believe anyway because humans know the world doesn't work the way the tales say it does. Even the people who believe the book say the God who wrote it hates anything unnatural or magical. They say this while praising the God who supposedly did unnatural, magical things. After making sure everything got written down, the God threw all the stories away. They got lost, which means he threw them away. This is an all-powerful, all-knowing being, remember? He could have protected them. He chose not to. Now, some copies remained, not quite perfect, but whatever. And they have a lot of deletions and additions and corrections, but no biggie to this God. It's not like this is important or something. Many years later, the God decided maybe foreigners needed a copy of his holy words in their own language. Not that they could all read, but oh well. And the translations obviously aren't exactly right, and no two say the exact same thing. But again, big whoop. It's not like this is a life or death matter, right? No need to be all that careful. But it is. At least the God says it is. Not just life and death either. It's about eternal life and eternal death. Yet, since the book is complicated and full of evil and craziness, even people who can read and have a copy don't quite understand it all or feel that it presents a reasonable tale. And this God, who made a pure mess of introducing himself, is up there saying, "Hey, what's the problem? I'm here. You don't know I'm here? How come?" This God who performed miracles so he could use one particular man, Jonah, to accomplish his goal. This God who knows the human mind perfectly. This God who could easily show himself to every human being at once. Chooses this slipshod way of making himself known and then blames his creatures for not knowing he exists. That is what believers in Yahweh want us to accept, and I simply cannot do it. Hearsay, the telephone game, that's the trustworthiness of the book called the Holy Bible. And worse still, those who put it together, those uninspired human men who put it together, had ulterior motives. The Bible's like any other book. The winners write the history. The truth is, the original Christianity is most likely not even presented in the New Testament. And this is the mess some think the perfect, all-knowing God thought was the very best way to make himself known. Yet there is a whole field of study called apologetics that seeks to defend the Bible. Why would the perfect word of God need to be defended? It needs it because it is a pure mess of contradictions, inconsistencies, lunacies, and cruelties, written by people who didn't even understand where the sun went at night. Did you know that the mortality rate in the United States in 1800 for children under 5 years old, was 462.9 deaths out of 1,000 births? That means that nearly half of all children died before their 5th birthday. In 2020, we had 7 deaths in 1,000. What changed? Did you always say, "Oops, I'm doing a bad job of knitting these kids together in the womb"? Or, "Oops, I'm not watching over these little sparrows very well"? No, these babies never crossed his mind. He's not pro-life. He'd just as soon slice off the heads of these sweet innocents or drown them as to help them be healthy. But humans cared, and humans found ways to reduce these deaths. And that is why the infant mortality rate today is far less. Science, not a God, cares about babies and other humans. Science, not a God, studied and used by human beings, provides for us and keeps us healthy and alive. Yahweh does nothing to show us that he even exists, let alone that he cares for us. If he is real, he either didn't want to succeed in his mission of meeting us and expressing his goodness and care and concern, or he's incapable of doing so. Either way, he failed to provide evidence of himself that is incontrovertible. And a true God would know that and do better. Sorry, I'm choked up. If it were important enough to him. So Yahweh isn't real, he's stupid, or he doesn't give a rat's tail about us. Thank you for watching. Bye.